The first verse that they are claiming is Surah 6, verse 112. It reads, "And as such, we have made for every prophet an enemy, devils of the Ins and the Jinn, inspiring each other with fancy words in order to deceive. Had your Lord willed, they would not have done it. You shall disregard them and their fabrications." The claim is that the phrase "you shall disregard them" is referring, it can imply that the jinns are actually humans. Why? Because according to them, you cannot disregard something that is invisible. So let's take this from the top. God here talks about devils of the ins and the jinn. What are the devils? The word that's used here is shayateen, which comes from the root shatana, which means to become distant. And God tells us in Surah 7 that the shaitan is your clear enemy. The shaitan, according to the Quran, is a title that was given to Iblees after he disobeyed God. And God gave Iblees the title shaitan, the one who is distant. Okay? This indicates for us that it's an evil type of behavior. And so shaitan is the quality given to both the jinns and the humans. And this is why this verse says, devils of the ins and the jinn. It means that there can be devils for the ins and devils for the jinn, evil qualities for both of these species. But to directly answer this claim, God says here, devils of the ins and the jinn inspiring each other. The Arabic word inspiring is yuhi, which means to communicate in a hidden manner. If the jinns in this case are humans, there would be no need for using the word yuhi in this verse. The fact that God is using the word yuhi, which means to communicate in a hidden manner, indicates that the communication between the ins and the jinns are not direct. They're communicated in a hidden manner, which indicates that jinns are actually non-human. Moreover, it says, "You shall disregard them and their fabrications." The disregarding here can be a physical disregarding or as a conceptual disregarding. We can see an example of this in Surah 37, verse 125. Would you call on Baal and disregard the best creator? Are we physically walking away from God here, or are we simply disregarding God conceptually? So again, this verse in of itself indicates for us that the jinns are actually non-human because God is using the word yuhi, which means to communicate in a hidden manner, and that the disregarding can be a physical one or a conceptual one. Another claim is made in Surah 6, verse 130, which reads, "O assembly of the jinn and the ins, did not messengers come to you from among you, narrating unto you my revelations and warning you of the meeting of this day?" The claim here is really twofold. They say that the phrase assembly of the jinn and the ins implies both are humans, because according to them, you cannot have an assembly of jinn and ins if one cannot be seen. In other words, they say that the assembly of the jinns is the intermixing of the jinn and the ins, and it can only happen with human beings. The second claim is in the phrase messengers that come to you from among you. And they say this can only happen to humans. So again, there's a problem with these types of claims. It seems as if the persons who are claiming this are not appropriately examining the verses, key words within the verse, as well as cross-referencing other verses throughout the Quran. God says, "Ya ma'shar al-jinn wal-ins." The Arabic word for assembly is ma'shar, which means a fellowship. And I see no problem with hidden ones assembling with the perceived ones. And in fact, when we read the Quran, God tells us precisely what is the function of the devil, which is a jinn. God says in Surah 17, verse 64, "And entice whoever you can of them with your voice, and transport upon them with your illusions and your movers, and join with them in their money and children, and promise them, but the devil promises nothing but deceit. And notice that God is using the word devil here, shaitan, because it is a evil quality. So the jinns that can live amongst us, the hidden ones, can live amongst us and do all of these things. They can absolutely influence us. After all, God is using the word ma'shar. Okay, he doesn't say ma'sharain or ma'sharay, okay, two fellowships or two assembly. He's saying one assembly. Why? Because the jinns are also living amongst us and they're going through the same trials, the same test as the ins. So we are in this together. And God tells us that the jinn are the hidden ones that can do all of these things to us. Now the second claim, to address the second claim, it says messengers come to you from among you, right? But this, very simply, God does have jinn messengers, okay? Not God, sorry, but that jinns, there can be jinn messengers. God, for example, talks about in 46:29 how there are jinn messengers. It says, we directed to you a company of jinn in order to let them to listen to the Quran. So when they arrived there and they said, pay attention, then when it was finished, they returned to their people to warn them. They behaved and functioned like messengers. They were spreading the message of the Quran. Again, jinns can see us, but we cannot see them. So I see no contradiction in 6:130 in the idea that the jinns are the hidden ones that can absolutely be a part of our lives and that there are messengers from among them. No contradiction at all. Another claim is made in Surah 7 verse 179. It says, and we have given to hell many of the jinns and the ins. They had hearts with which they did not understand, they had eyes with which they did not see, and they had ears with which they did not hear. So the claim that is made here is that the jinns, in this verse, jinns have eyes and ears and hearts, which means that they are humans. And again, this is a poor approach to this verse. First of all, we see in the Quran that God has a face and hands and eyes. Does this mean that God is a human? No. So the usage of the words eyes, ears, and hearts does not necessitate that this thing is a human being. Moreover, and more relevant to this verse, is that verses such as these, 7:179, has the theme of the hereafter. This verse, as well as other ones that talk about jinns having eyes and ears and whatnot, exclusively talk about the hereafter. And we should know that in the hereafter, it's really a different ball game. We'll go to Surah 50. God says, and the horn is blown on the promised day, and every soul is brought with its driver and a witness. You were heedless of this, so now we have removed your veil, and your sight today is sharp. God here is speaking to the human being, and in the hereafter, God will remove our veil, and our sight will be sharp. This indicates that in the hereafter, we are going to see everything. We are going to see God, the angels, as well as the jinns. We will basically see the unseen world. Again, because this is the day of judgment. Our veil is removed and our sight is sharp. Moreover, if we just simply continue in the passage, God says, and his associate said, here is one who is a transgressor. The word associate, qareen, that is the jinn that accompanied us throughout our lives. The next verse, his associate said, our Lord, I did not corrupt him, but he was already far astray. And we can see that the word qareen is used in 438. And whoever has the devil as his qareen, then what a miserable qareen. Okay? So as we can see, every human being will have a jinn with him or her. And this jinn has the ability to influence us, to lead us astray, or to even help guide us. So Again, 7179 has no contradiction whatsoever to the idea that jinns are hidden ones. This verse actually confirms for us that the jinns are the hidden ones. The next verse we'd like to talk about is Surah 17, verse 88. This verse reads, "Say, if you gathered the ins and the jinn onto bringing a Quran like this, they could not come with its like, even if they were helping one another." Now the claim is that this verse talks about the gathering of the ins and the jinn. And according to this claim, you cannot gather with the jinn if they are invisible. This is the claim. But again, this is a poor claim, simply because they are not really reading the verse. All we have to do is actually read the last phrase, which is translated as, even if they were helping one another. But in Arabic it reads, وَلَوْ كَانَ بَعْضُهُمْ لِبَعْضٍ ظَهِيرًا. The key word here is ظَهِيرًا. Word for word, it says, even if some of them for others, ظَهِيرًا. Now the word dhahira plays a significant role because it means to be physically exposed and strong. So God here is telling us that if you gather the ins and the jinn, even if some of them for others were physically exposed. So this verse is a dead giveaway that the jinn are not seen. They are hidden ones. So I don't see how someone can make this claim and yet not read the verse thoroughly. Another claim is made in Surah 18, verse 50. It says, "We said to the angels, submit to Adam, so they all submitted except for Iblees. He was from the jinn, so he disobeyed the order of his Lord." Now the claim is more of a general claim. The claim is that the word jinn that is used here signifies a leader or a genius. So in other words, all the angels submitted except for Iblees. He was from the leaders or from the genius. But again, let's approach this logically. So let's assume that God says that the word jinn is a leader. There's really no evidence of this, especially that it says he was from the jinn. He wasn't a leader, he was from the leader. It simply does not make sense. If we replace the word jinn with genius, we're also going to have a problem. How could a genius disobey his Lord? He wouldn't be a genius. No genius would disobey the order of his Lord. So again, all we have to do, as I mentioned earlier about this verse, is understand that the jinns are a type of angel made of fire. Iblis was one of many jinns, and the jinns are the angels that disobeyed God. Now we come to Surah 34, verse 12, which talks about Solomon. It reads, "And for Solomon the wind was given, traveling 1 month, coming and going 1 month, and we caused a spring of tar to flow for him, and from among the jinn are those that worked for him with the permission of his Lord." The claim, how can the jinns work for someone if they are not human? Well, this verse clearly tells us it's with the permission of his Lord. Remember, Solomon is a Nabi, he's a prophet chosen by God, okay, and given him special abilities. And Solomon was able to speak to ants and to birds. He controls the wind. Okay, so this shouldn't be a far-fetched idea whatsoever that God gave him the ability also to control the jinns. And the verse clearly says, with the permission of his Lord. So I see no contradiction to this claim, to this idea that the jinns are the hidden ones. It's a special ability given to a prophet. Then we come to Surah 34, verse 40 through 41. It says, "And on the day when we gather them all, And we will say to the angels, was it you that these people used to serve? They will say, be you glorified. You are our Lord, not them. No, most of them were serving the jinn. Most were believers to them. The claim is that they were serving human leaders, which is, again, an odd claim because God here is speaking to the angels. If the jinns are humans, why is God asking the angels if they were being worshipped? It simply does not make sense. We see in other verses where God clearly speaks to humans. He asked Mary and Jesus if they were being worshipped. Here, God is asking the angels if they were being worshipped. Why? Because the jinns are invisible. The jinns are hidden beings. So God is asking, were these people worshiping the angels? No, they were worshiping the jinns. They were serving the jinns. And we can see in the Quran, angels can act as invisible forces in Surah 9, verse 26. So this verse in of itself indicates that the jinns are actually not humans and they have the qualities of angels. Now, this next claim is more of a supposed logical question type of claim. It asks, how can jinns suffer from the hellfire if they themselves are made of fire? And I found this question to be very odd, especially from people who actually have studied the Quran. Well, the answer to this is that simply because God says so. You see, the jinns are made from fire and not necessarily they are the fire. Moreover, we don't know what degree and whether the hellfire in the hereafter is actually a fire. We don't know. But what we do know is that both the jinns and the ins are going to enter hell. And we know that the jinns are made from fire and the ins are made from mud. So the idea, this question is really self-defeating. In Surah 38, verse 85, it says, I will fill hell from you and from those who follow you from among them. Here God is speaking to Iblees. Okay, he says, I will fill hell from you, minka, meaning his progeny, his people, the jinns, and from those who follow you from among them. The them here is in reference to the bashar, the humans. So both the jinns and the bashar will enter hellfire. And finally, Surah 72, verse 6, probably one of the most often quoted verse by those who claim that the jinns are actually humans. The verse reads, there were men from the ins who sought refuge in men from the jinn, so they increased them in adversity. And the claim is that because God says men from the jinn, there is no doubt that this indicates that the jinn are human beings. And I hate to keep repeating myself, but this is again an absolutely poor approach to this verse and an inability to thoroughly examine the key words that are used here. God says men from the jinn. The word men is translated here, and the Arabic word is rijal. God says rijal from the jinn, and he also says rijal from the ins. Why does God use the word rijal here? If God is referring to, for example, males, he could have used the word dhakar, right? But he did not. He used the word rijal. And the word rijal is of significance. It comes from the root rajala. Rajala means a leg, or it signifies a form of movement. And even men, human men, are called rijal when they grow up because it's a quality that is given. And God is speaking of a quality of a mover or a quality of movement. Why? Because a rijal has the ability to be the provider, the breadwinner, the traveler, the trader of the household, or whatever it may be. And even in the Quran, God tells us and gives the responsibility and the duty of the rijal to be the breadwinners, like in Surah 4, verse 34. So the idea of rijal from the jinn isn't talking about human rijal. It's talking about rijal, a quality of a mover from the jinn. It has nothing to do with being a human. God says rijal from the jinn, or movers from the invisible ones, and movers from the perceived ones. Nothing to do with being a human being. Okay, so again, rijal from the ins, the word rijal that is used here signifies movement. Movement from the perceived ones and movers from the invisible ones, or the hidden ones. Nothing to do with human beings. So to reiterate and conclude, does the Quran support the idea that jinns are actually humans? Aside from all the verses that we presented and addressing all the claims being made, let's take a look at Surah 41 verse 29. It says, "Those who have rejected will say, 'Our Lord, show us the two who have misled us from among the jinns and the ins, so we can make them both under our feet, so that the two would be the lowest.'" Notice here the duality that is being used here to emphasize that the jinns and ins are actually two distinct species. So the answer is no, they are definitely not humans. Are the jinns leader humans? Well, let's take a look at 3367. They will say, "Our Lord, we have obeyed our leaders and our learned ones, but they misled us from the path." Here they are talking about their leaders and their learned ones. They did not use the word jinns. So the answer is no, they are not the leader humans. Are the jinns genius humans? Well, the answer is in 34:14, where God talks about the jinns that are working for Prophet Solomon. And it says, "The jinn realized that if they had known the unseen, they would not have remained in the humiliating retribution," indicating that they are indeed not human, and they are definitely not genius humans. So no, the answer is no, jinns are not humans, nor does it refer to a characteristic of a human. Rather, as we have seen from the Quran, the word jinn means a hidden thing, and they are actually angels made from fire. Whereas the ins, the word anasa, means a perceived thing. They are from the bashar, made from mud. Two distinct creations, and they have nothing to do with each other as far as creation is concerned. Now, as a side note, one thing I am realizing in some of those who are making this claim that jinns are actually humans is that they seem to have a problem with the idea of having some of miracles, the Quranic miracles that we see. For example, the virgin birth or the splitting of the sea. These types of miracles. And they try to rationalize it with science or modern scientific approach. And to me, part of faith, part of believing that the Quran is from God, is to actually believe in miracles as well. We scientifically cannot prove God, although this could be argued ultimately, but we cannot scientifically prove that Moses was able to split the sea, or Mary was giving a virgin birth, and so on and so forth. So people that have a problem with jinns, invisible beings, they think of ghosts and goblins and whatnot. To me, they are not ghosts and goblins. They are things just like us. They have a life just like us. They have different features and different aspects than us. However, they too are going through the test that we are going through in this life as well. So I hope and I pray that this has helped you understand that the jinns are not human beings. They are the hidden things. And of course, we can get into many avenues, different avenues about this topic of jinns and devils and whatnot. But today I am just simply addressing this particular claim. Assalamu alaikum, and inshallah see you in the next video.